You can't improve on a goal unless you're tracking it well. Before Finaloop, our financial stack was just QBO, and then you're not actually closing until kind of the 19th, 20th. And it's like, oh, we have insights from 20 days ago. Where Finaloop, we're able to close within 5 days usually, which is, hey, we're able to close 3 times faster for cheaper. And on the 5th, it's like pretty much good to go. So just knowing exactly where we are in terms of either a net revenue per channel or a contribution profit goal per channel. We can't hit that goal if we set it on day 1 and then don't look at it until day 30. If you're a month behind those numbers, then it's gonna be really tough to survive in this climate.
Hi, this is Rayla from Finaloop. Join me as I sit down with real brands to hear how they got real-time visibility into the health of their business. These are honest conversations about what works, what doesn't, and why Finaloop became part of their journey. So I guess to start off, I'd love to just hear a little bit about what you were using before Finaloop. But what was your financial stack before Finaloop?
Yeah, before Finaloop, our financial stack was just QBO, and then whatever kind of mom and pop shop uh, we used before, and we kind of bounced around. And as we grew, um, we tried to get more specialized. So when we were sub 1 million, it was just kind of whoever down the street that we heard did bookkeeping. They didn't know a lot about ecom, and so we quickly realized, hey, once we hit 5 million, is more important to get someone who understood ecom in there. And we grew pretty fast. And to take a step back to give an idea of growth, we went from 0 to 1 to 6 to 10 within a pretty short period. And that's when we experienced a lot of kind of hiccups with the bookkeeping because so much was changing kind of on a month-to-month basis. And you had to have someone who really understood e-commerce and kind of all the nuances and all the different channels we were on, which is hard to find. And when we finally did find a decent provider, they're really expensive, and so we were kind of paying for it. So that's what we we're using previous to Finaloop, and so what made us finally move over to Finaloop. And to be honest, I shouldn't have said finally move over as a we moved over pretty quick. It was a no brainer when we switched to Finaloop, just because it connected with everything we needed to automatically, right? So all the integrations were there. Um, you and the whole team understand e-commerce really well. And so when we were explaining any problems, it was not the first time, our bookkeeping firm or accounting firm had heard of those problems. So that was very nice. We're like, oh yeah, we've dealt with this before. You just do this, an easy fix. And then also it is much cheaper because there's all the integrations there. I mean, you're not paying to manually pull, payment processing reports from every single channel. And so I understand why the bigger you get, the more expensive it is from a mom and pop esque bookkeeping firm because they're, in 10 different spreadsheets trying to reconcile everything together. And so Finaloop's, I don't want to sound like too much of a super fan, but much better,
I
much
love it. You're
faster,
not
much
hearing me
cheaper.
complain.
Yeah. So that's how I would say those two things kind of much better, much faster, much cheaper. Um, is why we switched over, but that was kind of our history of who we were using beforehand.
Okay, got it. So would you say that beforehand, the main pain point, the one that really got you to like look for a change was first someone with e-commerce knowledge, that the fact that you were dealing with people who didn't really understand e-commerce was very painful. And then once you found somebody else that did have the e-commerce knowledge that you needed, then this became way too expensive to be sustainable. So, right? That
Yeah,
was
I would say that is correct. Is the right way to think about it. I think the other thing too is just cost. Or sorry, not cost, but speed to close. Where no matter who we had, you're not closing books until the 15th of the month at the earliest. And then the people who uh couldn't keep up with the business changes when we got the report from the 15th, it wouldn't take long to look at something and say, hey, that doesn't look right. And then you're not actually closing until kind of the 19th, 20th. And it's like, oh, we have insights from 20 days ago. And so you're not actually able to, act as quickly as you would like. Where finally we're able to close, within 5 days usually of the month, which is, hey, we're able to close 3 times faster for cheaper. And it's on the 5th, it's like pretty much good to go because we're tracking it through the month. And so it's been something we've been able to bring in house because of how light and easy bookkeeping's become now. Um, so I'd say that's, but yeah, three big changes in terms of speed, accuracy, and cost.
Fantastic. And then in terms of, I guess, now you've been at Final for how long now?
Uh, we're coming up on a year and a half, I
Wow. Okay.
believe.
I remember when
Yeah.
we had like the first call a very long time
Yeah,
ago.
because I we almost onboarded like 2 years ago, but waited a little longer.
Yeah, I know. I remember that initial call, and I remember thinking like, wow, it would be like the perfect fit. And
Yeah.
then there were just a lot of there was a lot of back and forth. I recall that, but I think, now, that you've been with Final for almost a year and a half. Obviously, you're probably pretty familiar with the system. I'm curious if you could tell me a little bit about what your monthly process is in terms of, you know, reviewing the financials, taking the information that you need, like actually using it to make decisions for the business. What's a little bit of that process like?
Yeah, it's become easier and easier. So what the first couple months on Final Loop look like when we first onboarded was just making sure understood all the transactions. Um, so making sure everything was being classified correctly, making sure kind of all the debt costs flowed correctly, and that this cost was allocated toward interest expense, this cost was allocated toward actual principal pay down, making sure all of our cogs were inputted correctly. And so that first month and a half, you have a decent onboarding experience, and you have to be pretty hawkish to make sure everything is flowing correctly. But what it looks like for us now, a year and a half later, is pretty much just going in and updating those for only new vendors. And so that's why I say it's so easy for us to now bring in house. Um, because close really only does take, less than 2 days in terms of me actually looking at it. The reason it takes 5 days is because I don't look at it probably until the second or third day. Um, but it's pretty simple now where, hey, we're with a lot of the same vendors, we're using a lot of the same tech platforms. Like our money's going to the same places it was for the most part, last month, the month before. And so Final Loop has had, 14, 15 months of learning now. And so it's really simple. And so because of that, we're able to go in on a daily basis and say, hey, what did net revenue look like from across all channels? Um, and then it can help us triangulate in terms of what is a net profit on any given day or any given week during the month, which beforehand was pretty difficult to do. I will say there's other tools out there that can help you get close to that, whether you're using North Beam or Triple Whale. And as long as you know your business's kind of fixed costs on any given day, you can kind of uh, get there mentally. But Final Loop has also been the kind of the platform that's helped us understand what that is on any given day. So um, I would say that's kind of what the month to close looks like now compared to what it looked like, a year ago. So it's almost like a too good to be true solution where it's like, oh, it's very simple, it's very easy. Final kind of pulls everything almost by itself at this point now.
Okay, great. So what let's say like in terms of like obviously after the end of the month you go in and you do that quick review as you said to make sure all the new vendors are updated and everything like that. But like once your numbers are final, once you're like, okay, it's closed, I'm signed off, this is good, this is where it needs to be. What do you actually like do with those numbers after that? Do you is that just like okay, you have it for tax purposes or do you actually like use it in terms of like the decisions that you're making? How does it actually influence the operations of the business?
Just knowing exactly where we are in terms of either a net revenue per channel or a contribution profit goal per channel. So we can't hit that goal, if we set it on day one and then don't look at it until day 30. And so having that kind of midweek or, bi-weekly, depending on how you describe bi-week, whether it's twice a week or every 2 weeks, um, helps us. And again, I don't know if there's much more to say on that. It's like just having the number in front of you every single day, whether it's a revenue goal or contribution profit or a net profit goal, helps you get there. And I think just being able to close on time, if there are any red flags that you missed during the month, where it's like, oh, this looks weirdly expensive, or this looks less expensive than it should. Just being able to flag those earlier, to fix those earlier. You'll always have things kind of through the month that'll slip through the cracks. Like a budget wasn't turned off there, someone you'll charge this extra here. So being able to have those in your hands as early as possible just allows you to make changes as early as possible. And the earlier you make changes, the more changes you can make, and then those kind of compound through a week, through a month, through a year. Um, I think personally that's how you can create momentum in a business, because if you don't have the reports until weeks later, months later, then you're never going to be able to enact change quick enough, especially with uh, kind of parlaying this into tariffs now with Finaloop's new inventory tool. It's like, oh yeah, inventory for a lot of brands is COGS is going to change overnight. And so for us, average costing kind of goes out the window because you can't really average cost things anymore, because of the difference in landed costs. And so being able to really correctly do FIFO accounting and understanding what your new margin is going to be when that inventory hits uh, the actual shelves. If you're not dialed in right there, there's a lot of businesses I think who are gonna be in a lot of trouble. So being able to know exactly when that switch hits, um, on the P&L, but also for cash, is going to yeah, it is very important to have.
For sure. Have you, out of curiosity, have you had a chance at all to look at the dashboard? The new We came up with a new dashboard that I think it was only available for beta testers, and I believe you guys had requested. I don't remember if it was you or Ben, one of you had requested access to it. I'm curious if you had a chance to look at that yet.
I think Ben might have requested. I haven't taken a look at it yet.
Okay, I was curious, just curious to hear the thoughts. Do you use any of the other dashboards in Final Loop? For example, like there's showing the contribution margin or any of the graphs and dashboards. Do you use them at all? It's okay if
None
the
of
answer is
like
no.
Yeah, no, none of the main dashboards. I usually just go actually into the P&Ls.
Mhm.
I'm actually like in the weeds enough to that I'm not just looking at the big number. I'm
And you're a
just
finance guy, right?
so I will say Ben's probably I would say that has been the nice thing with the dashboards. And we haven't used it enough, but it's something we've continually asked about because I think for like broader stakeholders where I'll know what the contribution margin is because and whoever the kind of the user at the company is on the finance side, it's like, oh, the dashboards are nice for them, but those are the people who are going to want to be in the weeds. But in terms of sending dashboards out to larger stakeholders is awesome because it's like, hey, if I send my CEO or my CMO a full financial report, they're not going to know what's happening, and they're not. That's not the easiest way for them to digest or consume the information. Where dashboard screenshots or just giving them a login to the dashboard is the way to help them kind of understand where we're at. So I'm very excited to use it, uh, because yeah, sending well, Ben, sending our CEO a full financial statement. It's like, yeah, I just want you to look at these three things, but then suddenly
They look at
there's a lot
everything
more
and they're like, "Wait a minute,
to
what's this?"
consume. Yeah, it's like, hey, just look at this one number.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, I guess, you had mentioned that before Final Loop, one of the issues was that you didn't get those financials until 15 days later, and now you're able to get them quickly. Um, do you have any like examples or anything of sort of what you're able to do now that you weren't able to do before, or just obviously anything specific really helps us in terms of the case study, making it more practical. But if you have something,
Yeah. I mean, every quarter, and again, this isn't totally because of Final Loop, but it's helped. Where every single quarter in the last year and a half has we've seen like a 30 to 40% increase in actual profits. Um, and I think a large part of that is because we've been so hawkish, looking at things on a month to month or even, week to week basis. Um, and so I think Final Look has just been a really awesome tool for us to understand what we're spending in real time. And the more you look at things, the more you're able to tell, hey, is this spend incremental or is this spend just dead weight? And so I think Final Loop has been kind of the tool for us over the last 12 months to identify, hey, is every single cost essentially good or bad for the business. And we've been very uh, quick to cut out a lot of things over the last year. So I'd probably put, yeah, 40%, 30% of OPEX, I think's been cut for Mancolor over the last 12 months. And a huge part of that is because we're able to, you know, look at all those things in a silo pretty well with with Finaloop. Um, so yeah, that's what I would say is just it gives us a much better understanding of what works and what doesn't work because we're able to see everything kind of come in real time.
Oh, fantastic. And I guess just as a, as the finance guy of the company, the one who really leads that
Yeah.
part, um, even separate from Finaloop, but just in general, what are you looking at when you go into Finaloop, for example, when you're looking at your financials? What are you looking at that you can then take back and say, either go to the CEO and say, "Hey, this is something I noticed that needs to impact what we do now of this," or this is something that needs to be cut. Like they just in terms of the actual financial process that you're looking at and how you use your financials for your operations. Do you have any like sort of like if you give us like an overview or specific example as to how you're using your financials to actually, besides for just checking to make sure like okay, help you identify any major differences this month or any, major losses or things like that to understand how it actually impacts the business decisions.
Yeah. I would say a lot more has to do with like the things that happen between the gross profit and contribution profit line. So just marketing spend. Um, I would say that's probably the thing that we're analyzing the most on a week to week basis. And you see in Final Loop, um, managing across. I know we're on North Beam, but if you have a kind of North Beam triple whale solution there, um, that's what we're looking on a week to week basis, just because that's the majority of our budget. So just making sure our budget's being allocated correctly. And that's more of a simple answer. But I
But
think Final Loop just
sometimes the
allows
simple ones
us,
are the good ones.
yeah. Um, Final Loop is the best tool that we've seen that allows us to get to that contribution profit um line, consistently every single day or every single week. Uh and if you're above or below kind of where we want to be, uh that really changes things where hey, if we're way above it, it's like, hey, can we spend more? Um and if we're way below it, then it's like, hey, this is not good for business. So just having a place that's really reliable that we can go to every single week and say, hey, this is where we ended up, that kind of forces our hand or uh, you know, really influences the direction that we're going to go either that next week or, through the end of the month. And if we don't have that, we're really just flying blind, and hoping it's like, oh yeah, just keep on ratcheting it up or down, Brian, who's our CMO. So I'd say that's the main thing. And it sounds simple, but just being able to understand, uh, your numbers, every single week or every single day. It's like, oh, that'll decide your budget for the next week or for the next month, whether you can push or pull. And especially, I think right now when e-commerce margins are getting squeezed as much as they are, um, I think a lot of brands are going to end up this year kind of close to zero in terms of margin. Where you're like, I think there's going to be significant margin compression, from both a gross contribution and net inside. So I think depending on what your capital structure looks like, I mean, there's a real chance that if you get it wrong and you're ending up, a couple points below or above where you want it to, um, in the case of below, it's like I think that could send businesses under. And so I think now more important than ever, it's just important to know your numbers accurately and quickly, um, because it's a really, really hard time to operate e-commerce companies. Yeah, so I mean, if you're a month behind those numbers, then it's gonna be really tough to survive in this climate. I know it sounds kind of gloom. I'm I'm very excited for this year, but yeah, more important than ever. Where I mean, there was times 2 years ago where we would go, 4 or 5 months without closing books. And it's like, oh, like, well, there's cash in the bank and we can get cash so easily and everything's so cheap. Um, and times are very different now. So I think just now more than ever, like, you just have to know your numbers. Um, yeah, and in my opinion, and again, I sound like a broken record, but final loop, I think's the quickest and cheapest way to, and the best, um, to have all of that.
Oh, fantastic. No, I know you think you say it's like pretty basic, but the truth is, obviously I have a lot of conversations with brands, and one thing I see a lot is that you have a lot of brands who make sure that they have their financials, and then obviously they're, checking their marketing spend like crazy and thinking about the operating side, but they sometimes forget that to connect the two, to actually use the financials to make sure that what you're doing on the operating side and on the marketing side is actually in line with what you can afford to do on those side, and making sure that you have enough cash flow to do those things. And I think that there tends to be a lot of disparity sometimes between, like, oh, we have like the finance team and then you have like the marketing and the operation side. And the truth is they really need to work in tandem. Otherwise, especially now, as you said, like the margins, every penny counts here. You have to like really be able to track like super granular in terms of, what's going into your margins. Do you have enough margins to be able to cover the potential extra costs from tariffs, from the increase in costs in general? So I think that is a really important point that you said. And one other thing I wanted to cover that we didn't touch upon too much yet is the whole concept of like COGS and inventory. So I know you had mentioned that you guys started recently using Inventory IQ, right? To
Mhm.
do the time tracking. So, first of all, how's that going for you so far? You've been on it just for a couple months now, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're just starting to move it for, I mean, we moved over, but initially it didn't really make sense for us just because, um, like LIFO, FIFO, average cost is pretty much all the same because we're getting pretty consistent. Uh, even with container costs, we're going up and down. It only make, a less than 10-cent difference in terms of landed cost. Um, so we've really ramped up in the last week, and so I'll have to let you know probably in a month how it's going. But yeah, we're starting to import all the PO data in there now, so finally we can kind of start to work its magic. But obviously, yeah, that'll be a big one for us, just because starting after whatever it was, April 9th, um, we're kind of dual manufactured out of Ethiopia is kind of a big part of our base. Luckily, that hasn't been touched too much. But then we have another consortium of inventory out of China, and obviously that's very painful to at this point to import. And so we've been doing a lot of price testing on the website on the revenue side. It's like, hey, can you find a couple extra dollars to offset um, the tariff increase? So that's gonna be a difficult one to manage. But I think to your point, um, going back out, knowing the numbers, it's like, hey, being able to uh, cost those goods correctly at the right time and understanding when that hits on a P&L basis is really important. Um, Especially since I'm hoping, I say I believe, but I'm also just hoping that the tariffs come back down. So just understanding, hey, which chunk of inventory uh costs what, and I think there's also a world where maybe tariffs can go up. So I think just when you're in an environment that's as roller coastery as now, understanding the value of every single good that's coming from different countries or the same country at a different tariff time uh is just a necessity. If you don't do it, again, I think there's gonna be a world where a lot of companies sadly kind of wake up and realize, oh, I have no more cash in the bank. But it used to cost this, but then I knew it was more expensive. I didn't know quite how expensive, and so just understanding, hey, every single unit from this PO costs this much, and that's gonna be a lot different than this next container. And then to your point, bringing departments together to understand, hey, um, CAC has to go way down on this, or hey, maybe we allocate this inventory towards this wholesale order, or whatever that looks like, and just to make sure that you're spending the right amount against um, certain inventory. Or CAC goals will change based on uh, kind of your gross profit number you'll have on a certain uh, SKU. which was different than it was 3 months ago. So, yeah, just making sure everyone understands it correctly. And I think Final Loop helps us get to that number very easily. We're not in, a million spreadsheets anymore. Final Loop has given my fingers a lot of rest because I'm not in Excel 24/7. It just pulls, because I will say the most annoying thing about close every single month was pulling all the payment processing reports
Mhm.
across everything and then doing like massive index matches. So I'm very grateful to the Final Loop team that I don't have to do that anymore.
How many hours did that take you beforehand to do? Like, how many hours did you spend every month doing that?
Um, I don't know about hours. I mean, I just kind of lock myself in my office for the weekend. Like, so I don't know, eight,
Everyone's dream
10.
weekend.
Yeah, just the one weekend a month usually. But now, I mean, it does it by itself, and so I don't even really have allocated time to close books anymore. I just kind of go in there at the beginning of every month and make sure everything looks good. And because I mean, you guys have done a really good job building it where it's really easy to find AP and AR reports. Um, and because you have the information on everything down to an order level, so you can even go and pull AR reports, like mid month, uh, or a year ago, or a lot of other. Uh, this is a very in the weeds. Thank you to you, Rayla, but most other accounting platforms, like when something's marked as paid, it's like marked as paid forever, so you can't go back and find like an old AR report because all of the orders have been marked as paid, if that makes sense.
Uh,
Where
yes, it
you
does
can, and finally
actually.
you can say marked as paid as of this date. Again, that's like one thing, a headache that has never been solved for finally.
By the
Very
way, I don't know, we actually we just sent out, the product newsletter updates for, like, this past month. I don't know if you saw it
uh
yet, but anyway, in there, we mentioned that we just released, in Shopify, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but you can export like, all the unpaid you can basically get an AR, AJ report from all of your unpaid orders in Shopify at any specific date. So you have that
yeah,
also now.
it's awesome. A lot of like very nuanced things, and I think that's maybe I'll wrap it up with this. Where I think those are things that really signal to me and other brands that Final Loop knows what it's doing, because it's really nuanced things like that where it's like, oh, that's someone who's actually been in the weeds, or at least has talked to enough people to understand what are the little things that improve people who are on the finance and ops sides uh, lives a lot. Um, and I think it's been very awesome that even the product a year ago would have been good for what it did, but every single quarter. To your point, yeah, I got the product email update. I haven't opened it yet this morning, but I saw it on my phone. All
Alright.
right,
Well,
every single quarter,
now you have a preview as to what's included as
yeah, I
part of
got a preview. But every single quarter, we're kind of getting these awesome updates where it's like, oh, Final is becoming more and more things, um, and so it can continually be an actual hub for everything finance and ops. Or it's like, oh, maybe there's one day where I don't go to the Shopify dashboard at all. I just come to Final Loop, and that's kind of my center of everything finance and ops.
fantastic. Thank you so much for the time, Mark. Have a good one.